Hey, Walter Sorrells back with more tips for the knife maker. Today, a new series, Shop Hacks. And the first in that series, the top 10 metals that you need in your knife making shop. Hey guys, new series here. Just quick tips for the shop, news you can use, not my usual over-the-top exhausting blizzard of detail. So first up, metal stock. Now, as knife makers, when we think about buying metal, we tend to think about knife steel. But that's not what we're talking about today. Fact is, there are all kinds of metals that are useful in knife making. You know, it's always a bummer. You've got some project going, you need a particular material, and you realize you're going to have to waste a bunch of time driving down to some store, or even worse, buying it online and then sitting around with your project on hold until it arrives. So over time, knife makers tend to accumulate lots of bits and pieces of metal stock so that they've always got the material that they need on hand. Most of these are not too expensive to buy in small quantities, so you don't have to break the bank stocking up on them. There are tons of other metal bits and pieces that I have in stock, but these are the ones that I find myself using day in and day out. Hands down, the most useful metal stock that I use other than knife making steel is drill rod. Now, drill rod typically comes in a variety of different grades, O1, W1, those are sometimes referred to as oil hardening steel and water hardening steel, and then some other grades like A2 and D2. Now, the one that you want is O1. O1 is the easiest to harden, most versatile. It gets nice and hard, and you can just make all kinds of cool stuff very quickly and easily with it. You can make punches, chisels. I mean, I'm just using it all the time to make something. Personally, I would buy 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch, and 1/2 inch. Now, you can buy other kinds, but those are all, reasonably inexpensive. You can buy them in 36-inch lengths, and then it's all sitting around, and anytime you need to make some kind of little tool, there it is ready for you. There are millions of uses for rebar, especially for guys who forge. The most common use that I use it for is just welding it onto some kind of stock that I'm either trying to break down in my press, or if I'm making Damascus, I'll weld billets onto it. But I've got a million other uses for it. So it's cheap and easy to use, and you can do all kinds of stuff with it. In the same vein, angle iron. Usually I get 1 1/4 or 1 inch angle iron. I just like to keep a little bit in stock. All kinds of things that you can use, especially if you got a welder, it makes it a lot easier, but it's one of those things you can just drill holes in it and screw stuff together too. If you need to fabricate a stand or some kind of little frame or whatever, angle iron's your go-to, and it's handy to always have some on hand. Brass rod. Typically, I buy mine in 1/8, 1/4 inch, 3/8, and then I usually have some 1/2 inch and some 1 inch sitting around. Now, those start to get more expensive once you get into the bigger sizes, but it's really nice to have some at hand. You can do all kinds of things with it. First and foremost, of course, you can use it as pin stock for the handles of your knives, but there are all kinds of other things that are useful in the shop. Keep some on hand, you'll find plenty of uses for it. Now, I have all kinds of aluminum stock in my shop, but the thing that I probably find the most use for is flat stock. So maybe 2 or 3 inches wide and 1/2 to 1/4 inch thick. You can buy it in different sizes, but that's the one that I find, I'm just always reaching for. You can chop it up and make little shop tools and little stands for things, stuff that you're going to hold something on, fixtures. I mean, lots and lots of uses for it. Now, I will say, kind of by the wayside, I also have a lot of aluminum rod. Usually those same kind of little sizes that I use for everything else. 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2, and then I usually have some bigger ones, 1 inch and larger than that. But if you're gonna just go out and buy some aluminum, I would get that flat stock first. The most typical grade that you're going to get is 6061 T6. The T6 part refers to the fact that it's relatively hard. You can buy it in different hardnesses, but that's the most common kind of aluminum that you can find out there. Stainless steel rod. Now, stainless steel comes in a million different varieties, some of which is hardenable, some of which is not. The kind that I typically use in my shop is going to be the non-hardenable. Typically, I'll use 303 stainless, sometimes 304, but 303 is probably the most common, and that's typically what I get. I don't use it so much to make tools per se, but more for pin stock and things like that. So again, I buy it in those same increments that I've mentioned already: 1/8, quarter, 3/8, half. And, you know, if you really want to go gonzo, you can go up 5/8, 3/4, an inch, and all that. But typically, I'm not going to go to those real thick pieces. I just don't find that much use for them in my shop. Another super handy thing, worn out drill bits and end mills. A lot of times you want to hold things together with little pins, and it's nice to have just very accurately sized pins that you can put into holes. Drill bits are just great for that. Copper and or brass shim stock. You can buy both of these, and they're both pretty much equally useful for most of the things that you would use in the knife making shop. But, you know, it's always handy to have a variety of little sizes of copper or brass shim stock sitting around. A lot of times you can buy sample packs of these, and then it'll kind of cover a wide range of things. You can actually use them for shim stock, but you can use them in your vices to keep from marring things. I mean, they're just lots and lots of uses for them. Brass tube, I just have it in 1/4 inch. I use it for thong tubes and other things of that nature. Really handy to have. I usually just have 1/4 inch. That's the only kind that I keep in stock, and it's really the only kind I ever feel like I need to use. Pre-hardened tool blanks. So these are typically intended to be used as lathe tools, though they can be used for other things. These are usually sold in high-speed steel, sometimes referred to as M2. Sometimes you'll see it in other grades, but M2 is probably the most common. And the cool thing about these is because they're pre-hardened, you can form them into all kinds of little cutting tools that you don't have to heat treat. And you know, the most common are 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch, and you know, some increments in between there. You can get a couple of just little small cheap ones, and if you need to grind some kind of little tool to scrape something, cut something, make a little mark on something, you've got that nice little hard piece of steel sitting there that you can grind something into real quickly, and boom, you're off to the races. So this is kind of a bonus. This is number 11, aluminum plate. I find it really handy to have 1 inch, 3/4 inch, these kinds of sizes of aluminum plate in fairly large sizes. Now, the thing about it is it's pretty expensive, so I'm not going to just run out and buy this just for no reason at all. But if you have reason to buy it sometime, pick up a little extra and you'll find lots and lots of uses from the shop. All right. Where can you find metal stock? Well, hobby shops sell a lot of small items, shim stock, brass tube, aluminum, things like that. Those are always good places to pick up odd little materials. Steel, drill rod, other metals like brass, you can find those at online suppliers like Online Metals and Metals Depot. You can buy rebar and angle iron just right around town at your big box DIY store or local steel suppliers. Those are pretty easy to lay your hands on, super useful. Drill rod and lathe tool stock can be found from industrial supply houses like Grainger and MSC. Couple quick tips. First thing is, you're going to have these things sitting around your shop for a long time. The more you accumulate, the more you think, ooh, is that stainless steel? Is that O1? I can't really remember. So always, the first thing I do when I get a new kind of material is just label it. You know, draw on it with a Sharpie, and then you can file it away, and 5 years later you dig it out and you still remember exactly what it is. So final tip here, anytime I need a particular size of stock, I almost always buy twice as much as I expect to need. It usually doesn't cost a ton, and that way I've got it at hand when I need it. Alright guys, I hope you enjoy this new series. We're going to be doing more of these over time, and most of them will probably be a little shorter than this one. Hope you enjoyed this, and keep making those knives. Thanks for watching, guys. If you feel like you got something out of this video, don't forget to subscribe. Also, click on the link to Patreon for a great way to give back to the channel. Plus, check me out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Links in the description. If you want something sharp and pointy, maybe a gift for yourself or one of the cooler people in your life, check out my Tactics Armory website and pick up one of our tactical or outdoor knives. And finally, if you want to learn to make Hamones or Japanese swords, check out waltersorrellsblades.com, where you can find videos about how I make Hamones, as well as forging, mounting, polishing, and fittings for Japanese swords. Thanks, and see you soon.